they are different enough that it is a really unique take on the genre. And I don't know, it's this movie is just pure magic. Like this movie is just it fires on all cylinders all the way around, you know. And not only do we have the reoccurring themes of them like talking about stuff that's happened, we've got a direct sequel to the previous film, but I mean we've also got this continuity to the first film, which I didn't catch on my first watch until I started watching some of the bonus features and stuff, that this blonde woman is the daughter of Max, who was the woman in the first movie.
Yeah, the White Widow. You know, I missed that as well. Like in when I saw it in the theater, like I kind of read about it after, like, oh, she's the daughter of so. I'm like, oh, I guess she is. You know, it's a nice subtle thing. She looks like her too. So Vanessa Kirby is the actress, and she looks a lot like Vanessa Redgrave, who played Max in the first film. And so I like how they tie that together. Very subtle. Kind of like it doesn't matter if you don't know, but if you do know, it kind of adds some richness to the world they're creating.
Yeah, exactly. Because when I first watched it, like, yes, watching it again the second time, they call out Max. They named Max, but I didn't make that connection the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
And so I did. It didn't mean anything extra to me, but it didn't take anything away. So then watching it this time, watching for any type of clues, as soon as they said it, I'm like, oh, there it is. That's really cool. I like that.
So, what did you think of Henry Cavill as the just his whole character Walker, and then obviously being the big villain at the end? Because I feel like he is the ultimate like Mission Impossible villain. Like finally, like across the board, like we have who's more than a match for Ethan Hunt. I think.
Yeah, I think he's really good. I think between them all, I think I probably still prefer Philip Seymour Hoffman on the whole, but like that doesn't take away anything from Henry Cavill, because I think he does a really good job, because he's the opposite of Ethan Hunt, you know? Ethan Hunt, he's like, he tries to be the Scalpel, but stuff tends to go wrong,
right.
Where Henry Cavill, he purposely is the Hammer, and that's how they refer to him in the movie, right? So, but he's basically the same thing as him in his job. He's just the opposite.
Well, I like the scene where he's talking to Angela Bassett, and it's much like the scene in the first film where John Voight is talking to Jim Phelps is talking to Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise, about because they're like, what? Why would so and so Kittredge? I finally got his name right. Why would Kittredge turn on everyone? He's like, oh, I don't know. Your Cold War's over. You don't have a place in the government anymore. You got a lousy marriage. You need some money. Like. He's talking about another character, but he's explaining his own motivations for the audience. So it's the same thing when Walker's talking to Angela Bassett there. He's like, how many times has his country disavowed him? How much can a man take before he breaks? And that is his motivation, so.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I've said a couple times in this podcast, so Mission Impossible 2 was it for me. I was done with this franchise after watching Mission Impossible 2. But watching the trailer for Fallout made me want to see this film, and whoever created this trailer is a genius, and they did a perfect job with it, because the trailer made me want to watch this movie. It did its job. They picked the right song, that Imagine Dragons song.
Yeah.
It's just perfect.
I thought they wrote it for the film, but they mixed in that song with the Mission Impossible film so well, right?
Yeah, they did. But that, and then with Henry Cavill's speech. It's the same speech, but it means something different when you watch the trailer and when you watch the movie. It's like, when you're watching the movie, it means something completely different, where he's like, look, he thinks he's the bad guy and he's justifying it. And in the trailer, when I hear it, it's like, he's like, look, this guy's just had enough, and he's going out of his way to like solve the crime, So I get a different feeling from it, and which is a really creative way to create the trailer. So where they take things and manipulate it, but they don't. I don't think they cheated in the trailer at all. So.
No, not at all. And I think that the bad guy in 2 was like they tried to do kind of like this. Like, oh, he's the similar guy to Ethan Hunt, and even in the last one, like they were like, oh, Solomon, he's a dark version of you, So I don't buy that, but I felt like they finally found what they were looking for in all these movies with this guy here, and he actually had the same plan as the guy from 4. With like, we're going to set off these nuclear bombs, and we're going to end this regime of world government and start a new age. That, like you said earlier, Brandon, it's they're tying together all these little things they have that were good ideas, but not maybe fleshed out to the full extent of what they could be. And this is when they meet the full extent of what they could be. And let me just say this, as everybody knows, I'm a big Superman fan. right? Henry Cavill, I think he could be a great Superman, but he's trapped in some very questionable movies with stories around him. My favorite performances of his are Fallout here, and then also The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the movie that the movie that Tom Cruise was supposed to star in. And if anyone hasn't seen The Man from U.N.C.L.E., I highly recommend it. It's based off much like Mission Impossible. It's based off a TV show from the 60s about spies and stuff. And I thought it was great, because the problem with Henry Cavill as Superman is he never gets to have any charm or fun, but in these he does, and he does have more of a range, I think, and I think this will be a stepping stone for him to get more roles. I think stuff like this will get him out of the Superman curse we've seen other actors get trapped in, because he's a very versatile actor and an incredible physical talent. And let's talk about the end, right? Because the end fight between him and Ethan Hunt, I thought that was great. They were both beat to heck, right at the end of the film. Even God, that was terrible when the oil sprays on his face and it burns him like that and he gets the droopy eye. Oh my God, right? But, he had been shown to be this incredible physical force throughout the whole film. But you're like, man, how is Ethan Hunt going to be in it, especially when he's so beat up? But then, the kind of, the odds were made even right at the end. While they were fighting on the cliff. And
right.
Let me ask you this. Did you think about Star Trek 3 when he was kicking him in the face when they were hanging off the cliff? Because I did.
No, I didn't. But I did think about Mission Impossible 2, right? And I'm like, so, again, another thing that they've brought forward from previous Mission Impossible films that we've seen Ethan Hunt do, which is climbing on cliffs and crazy cliffs and whatnot. And so here he's doing it again. Now, I did have one problem with this fight sequence at the end. There is no way that little hook was going to hold a helicopter like that. No way.
Well,
okay, not on a rock. No, I don't.
And then the way they kill Walker, it's such an over-the-top 80s action movie villain death, right? Where the hook comes off the cliff and gets him in the forehead, and then and you see, if you look real close, you can see he hits the cliff and there's a smear of blood and an explosion. I was like, yeah, that is awesome. So, but even in the theater, right? I'm sitting in the theater, and when they're hanging on the rope, I'm like, oh, he's got to kick it in the face. He's got to do it. And he kicked him and I was saying under my breath, I'm like, I have had enough of you. And he kicks him down the thing, and it was great. And I love that. And I want to say, this is Bad Robot. Maybe somebody there's a Star Trek fan. I don't know. Maybe they threw that in there. But I love that. That was a very fulfilling in confrontation, because I think we both agreed. Even though I loved Rogue Nation, I feel like the end was a little kind of plain, But here we had Ethan fighting Walker, and then we also had Ilsa fighting Solomon Lane, and then Benji was involved, and so I feel like this was a much better climax than the last film, even though I love both.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. Like I mentioned in our last episode, how I thought the end of 5 kind of fizzled out and it was kind of boring and slow. Like this, there was so much action going on here, and we had that added tension of which brought the plot all together with his wife, Ethan Hunt's wife. And when they started talking about the production of the film, like in one of the behind-the-scenes bonus features on the Blu-ray, Christopher McQuarrie had asked Tom Cruise, he's like, what would you want to do in this film? Like, is there anything you'd like to do? And Tom Cruise specifically said, I would like to resolve the plot line with his wife. Because, they got married in 3, right? She was kind of seen in 4, but, not really resolved or anything like that. So there was, the plot was there for 4, but not really. And so he's like, he would want to see that resolved. And I think they did a very good job of resolving that in a very, very fascinating way. Because, watching the scene with Ethan talking to his wife and, all that subtext of what he's saying, where she's like, you're on vacation? He's like, no, I'm working. And she's like, she knows what that means.
Right. The last conversation they have, too, was great because, we talked about here before, even, when we were talking about Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol with Amy, she was talking about he's lying to his wife and all this crazy stuff. I like how they addressed it here, because he's like, I'm sorry for everything, and she's like, no, you don't understand. I've experienced so many things because of you, and so they have a real good resolution, and I really feel good about, and I'm sure that's why they wanted to address it. If we're gonna keep making movies, we need to address this, and then we can move past it. So they have a good reconciliation there. We never need to see Julia again. That chapter really is closed. And let me ask you this, Brandon. They never went there in the movies yet, but do you think him and Ilsa are going to get together?
No. I don't think so. because that'd be a conflict of interest because they're both in the same business.
Well, I like how they have kind of a platonic thing going, like kind of in the Marvel movies. You have Captain America and Black Widow, like that's a lot like their relationship is. I think it's nice, and it's a nice change of pace where it's like, okay, you have your female lead and you have your male lead, and they're gonna get together, right? I mean, there is some they care about each other. Does it need to get romantic? I don't know. We have 2 more movies. I wouldn't be surprised if they go there. But I mean, like I don't know. Like I prefer if they don't because it's different. It's something different. I think.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't want them to do that. If they do, it'll be fine. I mean, like, yeah, they've got some good chemistry together, but I'll be fine if they don't. So, I guess so. Yeah, we haven't talked about the motorcycle chase through Paris, through the streets of Paris, which is pretty outstanding.
There's so many motorcycle chases in this franchise. I will say, if there's one thing I was a little desensitized to, it was that I'm like, I've seen it. We've seen it in almost every movie, a motorcycle. I mean, it was great, but so many other action sequences were so awesome. This was like, okay, this I've seen before.
Well, the difference with this one was they were going against traffic the whole time.
Yeah,
right?
that's
so
true.
that was different. And then the fact that they were actually at the Arc de Triomphe. Right, and they talked about that they had 2 hours to fill that scene at the Arc de Triomphe, and that is it. That is all that Paris would grant them, was 2 hours to film everything they needed in that roundabout.
And if you guys don't know how movies work, that is insanity. That would usually take probably a week to film something like that. But I applaud them for going on location. They're not in a room in some airplane hangar with green screen everywhere. They are at the real locations, and that's why. That's another flavor to why these movies are still so tangible and popular.
Yeah, going all over the globe. And that's like old-style filmmaking, They would do that in the 50s. They'd be like, oh, what grand locations can we go to across the planet? And that's something that they keep doing here, Even that scene in Norway or wherever where that rock face was at the end, so... but one other fake out that was really good, which throws you off, is right at the end when the bomb explodes. Like it's not the bomb exploding.
Or doesn't explode.
It doesn't explode. It's the dilation of the light. Like they go to white, and then the camera changes, and it's the sunrise is what they're showing you, right? And it's really, really effective because you're like, it's really down to the wire.
Like, did I think they were going to blow everything up? No, but they had teased blowing up everything else at the beginning of the movie, so I don't know. But that was a great transition because, we've seen so many movies where it's like, they cut the wire and it stops on 1 second. You're like, oh, cool. And they even did that in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol where he stops the thing from blowing up with like 2 seconds left. That was a very cool, directorial choice.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, you actually said that out loud. Oh man, but talking about the stunts, right? Leading up to that, we kind of talked about the fight, but the helicopter chase, and then even before that,
oof.
Tom Cruise hanging off the helicopter. Right, that to me, like that might be my favorite Tom Cruise. I know we talked about we love where he's climbing on the building in Dubai, but just to see him like jump. I mean, yes, there was safety wires and stuff, but he's hanging on a helicopter. People that is super impressive. I mean, where do you rank that in the great Tom Cruise action moments?
It's really good. It's probably still not my favorite, but it's pretty outstanding. Like. For the it's not even my favorite in this film because the free fall is my favorite in this film for sure. So, but it's good. I love it because when he does fall, like he does drop, So yeah, it's great. Yeah,
and then him running, of course, the great Tom Cruise run. Is present again.
Oh my goodness!
And I love probably my favorite, my laugh out loud. I mean, I had a few because this movie does comedy well. It does a good balance of that as well. But when Benji's getting in direction, he's like, "Turn left. Why aren't you turning left?" He's like, "I'm jumping out of a building." He's like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't have the 3D turned on." And then Luther's like, "Ugh." And then he tells him like turn right. He's like, "Are you sure?" It's like, "Oh, turn left. I had the screen lock on." And Ilsa's like, "Ugh." Like I just love those little moments, and it's the humanity of all these characters, even though they're doing completely superhero infallible things, people could never do. But those little moments, even when God, what was it when? It's I think in the bathroom scene, right? When they're fighting the not John Lark, and the guy kind of like straightens his coat and he's like, "Bring it on!" And Ethan's like, "Oh God!" Like he's like more of this. So I love how like overwhelmed he seems to be in these situations, and he's just trying to get through this no good, very bad day.
Yes, with a lot of really great